Just trying to get this up and running. Hopefully, I'm just waiting for Restream to pick it up. Just give me a second. Alright guys, so welcome to the stream. My name is Muda, of course, the blind husband. I'm married to my wife Jenny, that's what makes me the husband. Today I have some exciting stuff. I think it's a great part of the chapter. And before we get started, the stream is brought to you by Atlantic Coastal Cleaning.ca. This is my wife's shirt. She made me one so I could wear it as well. Figure may as well represent for all the support that she gives the stream and everything that we've accomplished. So, speaking of, today we're gonna start off with a quick video that I made here. It's basically just to give you an idea of how me and my wife kind of get around. I don't use a blind guy stick or a cane or an ID cane or anything. She she hates it when I do that because then I can carry stuff for her, and as she calls it, I'm her pack mule. Or I'm from Pakistan, so there's a different term she uses, but we won't get into that. But she means it in the best way, obviously. She married a Pakistani man. All right, so let's get started. I'm just gonna play you guys this particular part right here, and then we'll get into the actual story. And then I have about a 7-minute video just explaining how we got to that point in the story. And at the end, we're gonna wrap it up with our couple videos from our vacation that we did. I hope you can see me. I think you can see me. Good. But yeah, a couple of videos from our vacation, and I have a little stories about that vacation, don't I? All right, so I will see you on the other side of this particular piece of content. So let's get started, and we will go here.
Hey guys, this is the blind husband here.
I don't even see live.
Should be coming soon.
I need to get in here. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's me.
There you go. Let's go.
It's me.
Put the volume up over here. I want to see what. Yo. Let's go. Okay, this is good stuff. That's good stuff. You can turn that off.
Obviously.
Let's try to keep the chat open. This is Costco, y'all. This is our Buick Enclave, y'all. It's very dirty.
This way.
Where are you, Jenny? Hello? Woof woof. What are you, a puppy?
Not
All right.
I'm Berthy from
I
the Jersey.
don't know if that's you watching now. It says one watching.
I'm not. We need another water.
Yeah.
You said you wanted to get coffee.
One. Yeah, we do need some
You
coffee.
said we need sugar. I'm on last bag.
Sugar, coffee.
I don't even see milk or less on here.
The milk and lettuce is on there.
It's not. I just looked at the list.
It said lettuce was on there.
And non-bread, you're good. Because it's hot, you know.
Yeah. Here's Jenny looking at our shopping list, being all cute and stuff, with her hair all wild.
Wild. Oh, it's on another. Freaking weird.
Bow, 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 bow.
Can you put the keys in the pocket?
Maybe.
You have pockets. I have my pockets in my. This way, you're gonna hit the pole.
What pole? Good save.
And now you're gonna see all my weird sounds that I make. Which I'm not like those ones. Just. Whoa, hurts like crazy.
Hold on.
I pull out my.
Okay.
I pull out my Costco card because they check before we go in, and I ask them, "Why do you need to check the card?" And they said in case we forget the card, it's more problematic.
Is that the reason why?
Yeah. I like in my cheerful hello.
Just probably gonna cut out a bunch.
Oh yeah, the connection sucks.
Mm-hmm. We'll do what we can.
Well, at least my big strong man is here.
Mm-hmm. But then how am I gonna hold the camera in? I guess I'll just put it in the cart.
While you get the water.
All right. What shivvities? No. What kind? My comforter kind of
This
sucks.
is one that like is one, not like a stupid.
I can't feel it.
It's inside
How much?
70. It's usually 90.
Is it down?
It's Tommy Hilfiger.
Is it real down? What does it say? Read me the description. Read me everything about it first.
It says comforter set ensemble babyette 3 pieces. 3 pieces of what?
Sheet and everything.
Oh, in the back. 1 queen comforter. They have a king size, which I would suggest you get.
Should I?
I think you should get it.
King
2
size?
standard pillow. Okay, so just a queen.
What's the material? I'll try to watch the questions. I know I ask a lot of questions really fast, not giving you a chance to answer all the time.
I'm not seeing. Comfort Girl shell pillow stance cotton. So it's cotton.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, I got it. Get the king size one.
You have more. You don't need the sheet.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I
So
like that one.
you're what colors?
So far, I'm only seeing white, dark blue.
Give me dark blue.
Oh, Kimmy. Yeah, for you.
Don't.
Dark blue?
Dark blue.
Oh, they have
You are very sweaty. Take off your sweater.
No, I don't.
Why are you even wearing a sweater? It's so weird.
It's cold usually in here.
It's not today.
No, it's not.
It's not today,
Are these
Jenny.
motion sensor lights?
Are they?
The Walt Shop Store Infinity X1 work. No, I think you have to plug those in. Or the battery. I don't like them. I can't keep seeing my comment with the usual stuff.
That's right.
Do you need tomatoes?
Yeah, fresh ones, yeah.
Like the same one. Those stay really nice.
Yeah, I got them. I had a lot of them.
Tomatoes.
That's the tomatoes that we like to buy, y'all. Nobody's watching this.
That's alright.
They might later. I can make good clips out of it, who knows? What
Red
are-
seedless grapes.
You want some?
Bags are dark, so that means that they're not good. Like they're gonna go bad
Rod quickly.
I might want some tangerines though. Here. Would you eat some clementines? You like those now?
Yeah, I could.
If I peel them for you?
Sure. Yeah, if you peel them for me, that'd be awesome. I could eat
You
like
want some
fun.
kiwis?
No.
We have bell peppers.
Yeah, we have enough.
I don't like plantain. I think that's the one you're allergic to.
What?
There's bananas that are plantain.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm not risking it.
I get the, I don't know what kind of food.
Shopping for bananas. Bananas. Are you going bananas for bananas?
They're just easy to eat.
Are they easy to eat?
Tortillas, right? The proper
Yeah,
ones.
yeah. You said, yeah. Hey guys, this is the blind husband here.
I don't even see live.
Should be coming soon.
I need
All right, welcome back. Hi, Jenny. My wife Jenny is watching this right now. She's in the hot tub. And I want to also test out the fact I put on a couple of filters on this microphone, I think. It sounds pretty good, so I think that should be actually fine. All right, guys, so it's that time. We're gonna get into the next chapter of the story. So I'm gonna go back to the chat on screen here so you guys can see. Mostly probably just me and my wife talking, to be honest. But again, this is a hobby that I would like to do, and I actually like watching my own videos over again afterwards, because when I'm talking, I don't really hear myself talking. I just talk a lot. And I want to see how that actually sounds afterwards. So let's get into the story. So this is chapter 5 of the Lethal Journey. It mostly will focus on the mission that's being accomplished down below. It will involve us losing some more characters, apparently, you know, so that's the way the things go. But
all iCloud.
You know, like, what was crazy though is when I was like creating this chapter, let's call it, because I think writing is, you know, I just came up with the ideas, obviously, right? Like, that's you vibe coding a story, but one that you actually made, so you like it. And while I was writing the second part of this, like, my heart rate was like going so fast, because it's very, like, I told it, okay, like, it's just good action. This is the kind of action I want to see. These are the kind of imagery that you should be talking about, or the thought processes. And Gemini Pro actually did an amazing job at that. So we'll get into it now. I'm gonna put my microphone on mute, but I will be monitoring the stream and the chat. So if anybody has anything to say, I would love to hear it. Talk to you guys soon. This is probably about maybe 10 to 20 minutes, I believe. But I will be back once this part's over, and then we will get into some personal stories and some videos from our trip back in 2024 when we went to New York on a cruise. Talk to you soon.
Share button. All iCloud. August 20th. Note 5. Note 5. The silence that followed John's final, shuddering breath was heavier than the steel blast doors hanging above them. Stephen remained on his knees in the slick oil and scorched suit of the corridor, his large, scarred hands cupped beneath John's neck. The heat from the plasma burns on John's chest was still radiating into the damp air, carrying the sickening, sweet stench of charred flesh and burnt synthetic insulation. Stephen did not look up. His eyes were fixed on John's face, on the quiet, unnatural stillness that had settled over features that had spent 50 years carved in perpetual, stubborn endurance. Around them, the red emergency strobes of the junction vault continued to rotate in silent, rhythmic sweeps, bathing the concrete walls in a slow, blood-red pulse. 10 feet away, the 5 operatives of Unit 07 stood like obsidian statues carved directly into the shadows. Their matte black composite suits showed not a single scratch, not a smudge of grease, not a flicker of heat. They did not shift their weight. They did not sigh. They did not offer the quick, muttered prayers that human soldiers gave to the dead. They simply existed in a terrifying, mechanical vacuum. Their featureless visors pointed into the gloom of the open vault corridor. Behind Stephen, the remaining 10 dock workers were breaking apart. The thread of collective purpose that John had spun out of sheer willpower had snapped the second his heart stopped beating. He's dead, a worker named Gart whispered, his voice cracking as he stumbled backward, dropping his pneumatic cutting rig onto the iron floor grating. The heavy steel tool clattered with a hollow, echoing sound that made everyone flinch. John's dead. Look at him. His hands are melted to the wires. He's dead. Shut your mouth. Gart. Stephen growled without turning around, his voice raw, thick with smoke and suppressed grief. Get your gear up. The sweet grid is down, but it won't stay down forever. For what? Another worker, a lean, nervous crane operator named Dax, screamed back. His eyes were wide, bloodshot, popping out of a face caked in black grease and sweat. He waved a wildly trembling hand toward the silent figures of 07. Look at these things, Stephen. They aren't rebels. They aren't even people. We just watched John burn himself to ashes for a bunch of silent executioners and an empty corridor. I didn't sign up for this. None of us signed up to be butcher meat in... We signed up to break the sector, Stephen snapped, slowly laying John's head down onto the cold metal grating. He stood up, his massive frame hunched, his knuckles wide as he turned to face the terrified men. John gave you a path out of the foundries. You honor that path by moving forward. Screw his path, Gart yelled, backing away toward the dark, unmapped ventilation conduit that led west, away from the central vault. John's dead, and you're just a broken military relic who doesn't know when to quit. I'm going back to the lower tiers. I'll take my chances in the smelting base before I follow those black ghosts another inch. Gart, don't you dare step into that dark, Stephen shouted, taking a heavy step toward him. That tunnel isn't cleared. If you run now, I'm done. Gart screamed. He turned his back on Stephen, grabbing Dax by the shoulder. Come on, Dax. We're getting out of here before the droids recover. The two men bolted into the pitch-black mouth of the western conduit, their heavy work boots pounding a frantic, uneven rhythm against the iron floorboards. They made it 5 paces, without a single word, without a change in breath. The operative standing on the far right of the wedge, Unit 5, moved. The action was so fast it blurred the eye. In a fraction of a second, Unit 5's arm snapped upward, a heavy, unornamented sidearm clearing its magnetic thigh holster with a faint metallic click. 2 suppressed, high-density plasma blasts tore through the dark. There was no thunderous roar, only 2 violent, whip-like cracks that ionized the air into bright purple flashes. 50 feet, down the tunnel, Gart and Dax didn't even have time to scream. The high-energy bolt struck them squarely between the shoulder blades, burning completely through their heavy work coats, spine, and sternum in a microsecond. Their bodies didn't fall. They collapsed forward like empty sacks of grain, slamming into the rusted floorboards with a dull, wet thud, smoke rising from the blackened holes in their backs. No, Stephen roared. Pure, unadulterated military instinct took over. 30 years of muscle memory erased every thought of tactical alignment or long-term strategy. Stephen didn't see allies. He saw a rogue squad opening fire on unarmed men. With a furious, guttural growl, Stephen lunged forward, his massive, broad shoulders lowered as he charged directly at Unit 5, intending to drive the operative into the concrete bulkhead. Unit 5 didn't flinch. It didn't step back. As Stephen closed the 10-foot gap, Unit 5 simply pivoted its left foot, 3 inches, to the outside, raising the sidearm with a cold, terrifying economy of motion. Crack. A third suppressed plasma bolt caught Stephen directly in the right shoulder. The thermal kinetic force smashed into his collarbone, spinning his heavy body around mid-charge. Stephen let out a strangled bark of pain as his right arm went instantly numb, the searing heat cauterizing the flesh instantly as he slammed shoulder first onto the cold iron grating, sliding 3 feet, before coming to a halt at Unit 1's boots. Stephen lay on his side, his vision swimming in bright red flashes of agony. He clutched his right shoulder with his left hand, feeling the charred hole in his jacket and the slick, sticky blood oozing beneath his fingers. He gritted his teeth so hard a metallic taste filled his mouth. You, ellipsis, bastards, ellipsis, Stephen spat, glaring up through the red emergency light at the featureless visor of Unit 1 standing above him. They were running, ellipsis, they were just scared kids, ellipsis, desertion compromises operational security. The voice emitted from Unit 1's chest plate. It was flat, unbroken, identical in frequency to the shots that had just fired. Panic attracts automated bioscanners. Uncontrolled elements in a hot zone are a threat to mission viability. Unit 5 neutralized the breach. We're on the same damn side. Stephen wheezed, pushing himself up onto his left elbow, his body trembling from the shock of the burn. Alignment of target objectives does not constitute operational integration, Unit 1 stated coldly, looking down at Stephen with zero malice, zero regret, and zero empathy. You are local infrastructure guides. Your survival is secondary to the extraction of the asset. You will maintain discipline, or you will be neutralized to preserve stealth. The remaining 8 dock workers shrank against the wall of the junction box, their faces ghostly white, their breath coming in shallow, terrified gasps. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The message was crystal clear. Null 7 was not a rescue squad. They were an instrument of total, uncompromising war. They held no sentiment for the lower tiers, no pity for the serfs, and no hesitation to liquidate anyone who threatened the margin of their success. Stephen spat a mouthful of dark blood onto the grating. He understood the math now. He had served 30 years in the Imperial Orbital Infantries before his court-martial. He knew what cold, unyielding military logic looked like. These 5 figures were not fighting a political campaign to make people feel safe. They were operating on a terrifying, grand-scale calculus where human lives were merely fuel to be burned in exchange for an objective. Groaning through the white-hot agony in his shoulder, Stephen dragged himself back across the floor until he was sitting beside John's body once more. His right arm hung uselessly at his side, twitching with nerve spasms, but he used his left hand to reach into John's scorched, bloody jacket. John had spent his final seconds trying to touch something in his inner pocket. Stephen needed to know what it was. His fingers brushed against a hard, smooth object nestled near John's ribcage. Stephen pulled it out, bringing it into the dim light. It was the small, carved wooden token John had carried for years. The front of the token was worn completely smooth, polished by decades of John's thumb rubbing against the grain during long, stressful shifts on the welding line. But as Stephen turned the piece of wood over in his blood-stained palm, his brow furrowed in confusion. The back of the token was covered in a dense, microscopic network of etched symbols. They weren't human letters. They weren't standard Imperial military grid coordinates, nor were they the common trade runes used by the black market fixers in the lower levels. They were fine, geometric lines interlocked with tiny, precise tonal dots, a complex, mathematical language that looked less like writing and more like an orbital navigation schematic compressed into an area no larger than a coin. Stephen stared at the symbols, his heavy, bruised brain struggling to make sense of them. He was a sergeant, a meathead who knew how to breach a reinforced bunker, how to strip a heavy plasma rifle in 30 seconds, and how to survive on rations that tasted like wet chalk. He had spent 30 years taking orders from arrogant young lieutenants before he finally snapped and broke an officer's jaw on a transport deck, earning himself a dishonorable discharge and a one-way ticket to Sierra Alpha 1. He knew what this planet really was. The administrative propaganda called Sierra Alpha 1 an industrial resource sector, but everyone who lived here knew the truth. It wasn't a prison. Prisons required guards, fences, and budget allocations. Sierra Alpha 1 was a galactic dumping ground. When the central governing bodies in the inner sectors had citizens, disgraced soldiers, political dissidents, or union organizers who caused too many headaches, they didn't waste credits executing them. They simply revoked their travel passes, loaded them onto cargo freighters, and dropped them into the smog-choked lower tiers of the junk pile to spend the rest of their lives smelting raw alloys until their lungs gave out. John had been different from the other trash dumped on this rock. John was a builder, and looking at this carved token, Stephen realized John had been carrying a secret far deeper than anyone in Sector 7 had ever guessed. Stephen closed his left fist tightly around the wooden token, shoving it deep into his own trousers pocket. Whatever this is, John, Stephen thought, staring into his dead friend's quiet face, I'll get it to Adam. I swear to God I'll get it to the boy. Inside the matte black composite helmet of Unit 1, a very different mind was evaluating the scene. Beneath the sound-dampening seals, the biomonitors, and the artificial neural link array that flattened her voice into a synthetic drone, Sanwa took a slow, measured breath. Her real lungs, shaped by the thin, high-altitude atmosphere of a world that no longer existed, expanded against the tight internal padding of the suit. To the human workers cowering in the corridor, she was a featureless, terrifying killing machine, a manufactured stormtrooper without a name, a face, or a soul. They did not know that her original skin was a pale, iridescent blue, or that her eyes possessed twin irises designed to catch the faint light of a dying star. They did not know that the 4 operatives standing beside her, Unit 2, 3, 4, and 5, were human beings whose original faces had been systematically sliced away and rebuilt into identical, unidentifiable clones through dark, illegal, back alley surgeries in the Outer Rim. She was Sanwa, the last remaining commander of the 3rd Exodus Fleet. And to her, the death in this corridor was not an atrocity, it was an excruciatingly familiar math. Humans, Sanwa thought, her neural optic overlay tracking the sharp spikes in Stephen's heart rate and the rapid biodecline of the 2 dead workers down the tunnel. So fragile, so violently governed by their immediate fears. Her internal suit diagnostics flashed a quiet green query across her visor display, confirming that Unit 5's sidearm had returned to standby mode. Sanwa did not regret Unit 5's decision to execute the 2 deserting workers. In the grand, brutal geometry of their mission, a single frantic worker running into an uncleared corridor could trip a thermal tripwire, alerting Governor Frederick's security grid to their exact position. If the grid woke up before they reached the deep structural levels, all 5 members of Null 7 would be cornered and destroyed. And if Null 7 died, the secret of the atomic integrator died with them. Sanwa looked down at John's lifeless body. A faint, painful ache resonated deep within her chest cavity. An old, ancient grief that had nothing to do with the human lying on the floor. 25 years ago, her homeworld had burned for the exact same reason this arcology was currently rotting from the inside out. Human greed. She remembered the day the 30 Imperial warships had appeared in the pristine blue skies above her city. She remembered how her people had welcomed the visitors, offering them bread, water, and the knowledge of the matter sequencer, a technology her ancestors had built to eliminate famine and scarcity across their entire star system. She remembered how quickly the visitors' eyes had changed. It was an instant shift, a sudden, terrifying infection of avarice. The humans didn't want to share the technology. They wanted to own it. They wanted to turn a tool of infinite creation into the ultimate weapon of cosmic dominance. When her council refused to surrender the primary operational cores, the fleet hadn't negotiated. They had simply opened their orbital bombardment bays and turned a living, breathing paradise into a silent, glass tomb. Only 50 of her people had survived, scattered across the galaxy in 10 tiny groups of 5, hiding their identities, altering their bodies, and blending into the endless, human machine. And yet, Sanwa thought, her visor tracking Stephen as he painfully dragged himself back toward the remaining workers, they are not all the same. She had watched John hold those high-voltage cables with his bare hands. She had watched the raw, electrical fire burn through his flesh, witnessed the plasma bolts tear through his shoulders, and watched him hold the circuit open anyway. He hadn't done it for credits. He hadn't done it for power or territory. He had done it for a boy he would never see again, and for a dream of a world where his people didn't have to live in the dark. It was a staggering, irrational display of self-sacrifice. The exact same self-sacrifice her own father had shown when he shoved her into the last stasis pod 25 years ago. Humanity is a disease created by its leaders, Sanwa thought, her voice synthesizer remaining dead silent as she processed the tactical data routing through her helmet. The rulers are monsters, but the serfs, ellipsis, the serfs are just host bodies, crushed beneath the weight of the same iron boot that shattered my world. Unit 1. Unit 2's synthetic voice pinged on their private, encrypted neural channel, a frequency that bypassed the external speakers entirely. Local asset John is deceased. Local asset Stephen is combat impaired with a third-degree thermal puncture in the right deltoid. Structural integrity of the remaining local crew is compromised by 62%. Recommendation: execute remaining local assets to optimize movement speed. Sanwa paused, her twin irises narrowing behind her polarized visor as she looked at Stephen. Negative. Unit 2. Sanwa responded across the private neural link, her voice inside her own helmet carrying its natural, soft melodic cadence that no human would ever hear again. The former sergeant knows the structural layout of the unmapped support levels below Sector 7. Our orbital schematics are 25 years old. The arcology has expanded downward since the probe was launched. We need his physical knowledge to navigate the support spans. Understood. Unit 1. Unit 2 replied instantly, its neural feedback showing total compliance. Adjusting tactical parameters. Stephen designated as primary local guide. Sanwa switched her communications feedback to the external chest speaker. The cold, flat, manufactured drone returned instantly. Stand up, Sergeant, Sanwa commanded, pointing her featureless visor directly at Stephen. Stephen wiped the blood from his mouth with his left sleeve, groaning as he pushed himself up against the concrete wall. His face was gray with pain, his right arm hanging limp, but his eyes were burning with a dark, stubborn defiance. I'm up, he rasped. Where are we going? The vault is empty, Sanwa stated flatly. Stephen froze, his eyes widening. What? The primary chamber inside the vault is empty, Sanwa repeated, her synthetic voice showing no emotion, though inside her soothed. Her heart was beating with a cold, desperate rhythm. The pedestal shows a dust margin consistent with a removal event occurring approximately 25 years ago. The atomic integrator is no longer in Sector 7. A collective gasp went up from the 8 surviving workers. Stephen felt as if someone had slammed a sledgehammer into his stomach. Empty. Ellipsis? John. Ellipsis. John died for an empty room? The device was moved, Sanwa said, turning her head toward the massive, open archway that led deeper into the subterranean foundations of the arcology. It was moved down, into the unmapped structural support sectors that lie beneath the primary levels. Someone knew what it was, and someone hid it where Governor Frederick's scanners could never reach. She stepped past Stephen, her matte black boots making no sound against the blood-stained floor grating. We move now, Sanwa said, before the security grid resets. The heavy steel door of residential unit 402 groaned on its rusted hinges, letting in the sharp, metallic draft of the hallway before closing with a hollow click. Adam didn't look up from his data pad immediately. His thin fingers were moving with practiced, rhythmic precision across the cracked glass screen, guiding a wireframe freighter through a simulated atmospheric re-entry. A tiny red warning light flashed in the corner of his interface. A simulated heat shield failure on thruster manifold 3. Without breaking stride, Adam rerouted the auxiliary coolant lines using a salvaged macro routine he had written last Tuesday, steadying the virtual ship just as the door latch firmly engaged. Only then did he set the pad down on his narrow cot, his heart giving a small, familiar tug as he watched his mother step into the room. She looked entirely spent, her work overalls, stiff with dried salt and industrial grease from the lower textile belts, clung heavily to her narrow frame. Dark, bruised shadows sat deep beneath her eyes, and her light hair was pinned back in a hasty, loose knot, powdered with gray lint from the synthetic looms. She carried a small, dented tin canister under her arm, their daily ration allotment. Hey, kiddo, she said, her voice raspy and dry from 12 hours of breathing untreated air in the lower mills. She offered him a tiny, fragile smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Hey, Mom, Adam replied softly. Swinging his legs over the edge of the cot, he stood up and immediately walked over to the small wall-mounted basin, pumping the manual lever 4 times until a thin, rusty trickle of recycled water sputtered out. He wet a scrap of coarse gray cloth and handed it to her. It was an unspoken ritual between them, respect and gratitude, the quiet rule his father had pounded into the marrow of their home. You take care of the people who bleed for you. His mother took the cloth, pressing it to her neck with a long, shuddering sigh. Thanks, Adam. She set the tin canister on the small, scratched metal table in the center of the room. Inside were 2 lukewarm blocks of compressed protein mash, pale green, jelly-like squares that smelled faintly of sulfur and dried kelp, and a small bulb of rehydrated starch paste. It was standard low-tire fuel, uninspired, bland, and barely enough to replace the calories burned over a shift, but it kept the hunger from turning into an ache. They sat across from each other at the small table, eating in a quiet, heavy silence that felt unusual for their cramped home. Normally, the air between them was filled with chatter, Adam babbling about a new code bridge he had patched together, or his mother telling a funny story about the clumsy logistics oversetters on line 4. Today, the air felt thick, heavy, and cold. Adam picked at his protein block with a plastic spork, his eye shifting toward the far corner of the unit where his father's spare work boots sat neatly tucked under a shelf. They were empty. John hadn't come home after his shift ended 3 hours ago. That wasn't entirely unusual for a man working volunteer maintenance on the lower freight conduits. But today, every ambient noise in the building, the distant thrum of the lift cables, the sudden hiss of the steam pipes, the heavy footsteps in the corridor, made Adam's chest tighten with an inexplicable, sharp anxiety. He looked at his mother. Her hands were trembling slightly as she held her starch bulb. She hadn't mentioned John's absence either. It was a silent agreement between them, a desperate defense mechanism. If you don't say the fear out loud, it remains just a shadow. Rough day on the looms? Adam asked quietly, trying to puncture the suffocating quiet. They increased the line speed by 5%, she murmured, wiping a trace of starch from her lip. Governor's office sent down a new quota directive this morning. Everyone's jumping at shadows. The supervisors were screaming at the floor text before the shifts even rotated. She set her phone down, staring aimlessly at the scratched metal tabletop. It just, ellipsis, feels wrong today, Adam. The whole sector feels like a pipe about to burst. Dad knows how to handle the supervisors, Adam said, his voice rising slightly, as much to convince himself as her. He knows every blind spot in Sector 7. His mother looked up at him, her eyes softening with a sad, gentle tenderness. I know he does, sweetheart. I know. She finished her portion slowly, clearly forcing the bland food down for strength rather than hunger. When she was done, she stood up, washed her hands in the thin trickle of the basin, and walked over to the narrow wooden cabinet set into the far wall. It was the only piece of real wood in the entire unit, salvaged by John years ago from an abandoned administrative office in the upper mid-tiers. Inside was her haven. She reached in with delicate, calloused hands and pulled out a wide, shallow metal tray. On it rested her cherished life's work, a meticulous, handcrafted miniature model of a pre-industrial farmstead. In a world made entirely of rusted steel, toxic smog, and cold concrete, her tiny farm was a miracle of quiet patience. Over 12 years, she had gathered microscopic scraps from every corner of the arcology to build it. The tiny farmhouse was built from slivers of real pine crate shavings glued together with dried resin. The fences were made from copper wire pulled from dead terminal relays, straightened and twisted into delicate rails. The little crops of wheat were crafted from frayed yellow thread scavenged from the textile mill waste bins, and the tiny soil patches were made from crushed, dried tea leaves mixed with fine iron dust. She set the tray gently on her lap as she sat back down on her cot. She pulled a tiny pair of tweezers and a needle file from her pocket, her tired face instantly softening as she leaned over the model. Adam watched her from across the room. He loved seeing her work on it. Whenever the heavy iron weight of the junk pile threatened to crush her spirit, she would sit with her tiny farm, carefully gluing another fence post or shaping a miniature water trough out of a scrap of foil. It was her escape, a quiet, stubborn protest against the cold, artificial cage they lived in, a dream of a world where soil was soft, the air smelled like rain, and children grew up under an open sky rather than a ceiling of rusted iron pipes. Is that a new barn door? Adam asked, leaning forward on his elbows. MMHMM, she murmured, her tweezers carefully positioning a tiny piece of shaved resin against the miniature wooden wall. Scavenged a bit of red plastic wrapper from the canteen trash. If I slice it thin enough, it looks like weathered paint. It's really cool, Mom, Adam said softly. It's coming together, kiddo, she whispered, her eyes fixed on the tiny wooden house. Just needs a little more time. She paused, her tweezers hovering in the air. Her breath hitched slightly, and she slowly lowered her hands, staring at the miniature farm without seeing it. The sudden stillness in her posture brought the sharp, icy anxiety rushing right back into the room. Adam picked up his data pad again, tapping the screen to wake the display. The wireframe ship was still sitting in the digital hangar, waiting for his next command, but his fingers hovered motionless over the glass. The quiet inside Unit 402 was absolute, heavy with the terrifying, silent knowledge that somewhere far below them, in the dark, oil-slick depths of the arcology, the world had already changed forever. The heavy, pressurized blast door sealed shut behind them, cutting off the dull red emergency strobes of Sector 7. Ahead lay the absolute, suffocating void of the unmapped structural foundation. Inside Sanwa's helmet, the darkness did not exist. Her internal heads-up display booted into full tactical combat mode, transitioning seamlessly from ambient low-light amplification to active topographical mapping. A wireframe mesh of cool, electric blue instantly painted the surrounding geometry across her polarized visor. Environmental mapping, active, sonar paying, interval 4 seconds. To the human workers stumbling behind her, the abyss was a terrifying wall of pitch-black nothingness, broken only by the erratic, shaking beams of their small handheld halogen flashlights. To Sanwa, the cavernous space was illuminated in stark, hyper-detailed data streams. She stood at the precipice of a colossal subterranean canyon. The scale was staggering, defying standard imperial architectural limits. Massive, cylindrical support pillars, each one measuring over 100 meters in diameter, rose out of the unseen depths like the petrified trunks of iron redwood trees, carrying the weight of the 2,000 arcology tiers above. Between them stretched a single, terrifyingly narrow maintenance gantry. It was a skeletal bridge of rusted iron grating, barely 3 meters wide, with no railings, no safety tethers, and no stabilizing cables. It spanned 400 meters across the open void to the next structural tier. Far below, echoing up through the dark, was the deafening, continuous roar of subplanetary coolant rivers crashing through the bedrock. Sanwa's HUD automatically dropped a waypoint marker on the far side of the gantry. Objective, primary support pillar Secundus. Distance, 412 meters. As she shifted her gaze to the local assets. Her biometric overlay bathed Stephen and the 8 remaining dock workers in glowing thermal auras. Stephen's heat signature was a deep, bruised orange, his right shoulder radiating bright crimson where the plasma burn was slowly stiffening his muscles. Asset, Stephen, BPM, 132, adrenaline, elevated, status, combat impaired. The other 8 workers were washed in frantic, high-stress yellow thermal bands. Their heart rates fluttered between 150 and 170 beats per minute. Their flashlights darted wildly across the rusted grating at their feet, terrified of what lay beyond the meager 5-meter reach of their halogen bulbs. Unit 2, Unit 3. Sanwa communicated over the encrypted neural link. Her natural voice soft and steady inside her mind. Translated instantly into silent code. Form the vanguard with local asset Steven. We cross first. Unit 4, Unit 5. Maintain rearguard behind the local laborers. Watch their footfalls. If a local slips, let them fall. Do not compromise your center of gravity. Acknowledged. Unit 1. The synchronized neural responses chimed in her HUD, lighting up their respective squad status icons in bright, steady green. Move out. Sanwa commanded through her external chest speaker, the synthesized robotic voice cutting through the roar of the water below like a cold blade. Keep your eyes on the grating. Do not look down. Steven swallowed hard. Shifting his weight painfully, he aimed his flashlight forward, the beam catching the rusted, jagged edges of the bridge. Without a word, he stepped out over the abyss. Sanwa followed, stepping onto the gantry. Her suit's internal gyroscopes hummed, micro-adjusting her balance with frictionless perfection. Her boots locked onto the iron grating with magnetic precision. She did not need a flashlight. Her optical sensors filtered out the chaotic, sweeping beams of the human's lights, replacing them with a crisp, stabilized high-contrast overlay. The crossing was agonizingly slow. The bridge groaned and swayed beneath the weight of 14 bodies. The air grew colder, thick with aerosolized moisture from the roaring rivers 2 kilometers below. Sanwa tracked their progress on her digital minimap. Distance to waypoint, 200 meters, ellipsis. 150 meters, ellipsis. 90 meters, Steven. Sanwa, Unit 2, and Unit 3 had just reached the solid, heavy steel plating of the far platform. They stepped off the swaying grating, establishing a secure perimeter in the dark. Still out on the bridge, strung along the last 50 meters of the span, were the 8 terrified human workers, closely followed by Unit 4 and Unit 5. Sanwa turned, her thermal vision tracking the yellow silhouettes of the workers inching their way across. Everything was mathematically sound. The threat assessment module in her HUD registered 0 active security payings. The central grid was blind down here. Then, a sudden, jarring anomaly flared in her lower peripheral vision. It was not a digital security tripwire. It was analog, a physical, tension-based monofilament line, jury-rigged into the rusted grating decades ago, entirely off the grid. The heavy, trembling boot of the third dock worker had snagged it, pulling the wire taut. Warning, kinetic trigger detected. Unregistered ordnance initializing. Contact. Sanwa barked over the neural link, her combat subroutines instantly taking over her central nervous system. Before the human workers could even blink, the abyss erupted in blinding, apocalyptic fire. Hidden within the massive recesses of the adjacent support pillars, a dozen automated plasma batteries sprang to life. They were old, pre-imperial, unregulated scrap tech, patched together by forgotten smugglers or paranoid hermits from a century past. A barrage of hyper-accelerated blue plasma bolts tore out of the darkness, crisscrossing the bridge in a devastating, geometric web of crossfire. In the stroboscopic flashes of the plasma fire, the true, terrifying enormity of the chamber was suddenly revealed to the humans. For fractions of a second, the darkness was banished, exposing the gargantuan iron pillars stretching endlessly upward into the smog, and plunging downward into a bottomless gorge of jagged rock and churning, white-capped water. The scale was sanity-shattering. They were ants crawling across a thread in the belly of a mechanical god. Ambush, Steven roared, diving behind a thick steel structural rib on the safe platform, dragging his useless right arm with him. Out on the bridge, it was an immediate slaughter. There was no cover, no structural ribs to hide behind, just 50 meters of open, rusted iron suspended in the void. Sanwa's HUD went frantic, prioritizing targets as her combat reticle snapped onto the concealed plasma batteries. Thread lock acquired. Firing, she raised her carbine, the weapon interfacing perfectly with her visor, and squeezed the trigger. Suppressed, high-density bolts fired back into the dark, but the angle was impossible. The turrets were recessed deep within heavy armor plating. On the bridge, the first volley of plasma struck the human workers. Sanwa's thermal overlay registered the catastrophic biological trauma in horrifying, high-definition data. The worker who had tripped the wire was hit simultaneously by 3 bolts. His thermal silhouette spiked from yellow to blinding, superheated white as the plasma vaporized his torso. His upper half simply disappeared, while his legs collapsed forward onto the grating, smoking heavily. 2 more workers, screaming in sheer panic, dropped their flashlights and turned to run back the way they came. A heavy, rapid-fire plasma repeater mounted on the lower pillar tracked their movement. A sweeping line of blue fire walked across the bridge. The kinetic impact tore through their legs, severing bone and muscle in a microsecond. They didn't even have time to register the pain before their momentum carried them over the edge. Sanwa watched their thermal signatures tumble over the side, their screams echoing wildly off the iron pillars, fading rapidly into the roar of the water below. Return fire. Suppressive patterns. Sanwa commanded over the neural link. Units 2 and 3 stepped to the edge of the platform beside her, ignoring the plasma bolts scorching the air inches from their visors. They moved with mechanical perfection, laying down a synchronized wall of covering fire into the dark. But the ancient turrets were programmed with a brutal, overlapping killbox algorithm. Another dock rat, a young kid barely out of his teens, froze in the center of the bridge, his hands clamped over his ears in in pure, paralyzed terror. The strobing flashes lit up his wide, tear-streaked face. Biometrics. Shock state. Immobilized. A heavy plasma slug caught him square in the chest. The concussive force lifted him off his feet, throwing him backward into another worker. The two bodies tangled, sliding across the slick, rusted iron grating until they slipped beneath the bottom wire, plunging into the abyss in a tangle of flailing limbs. The remaining three workers threw themselves flat against the grating, crying, praying, trying to press their bodies into the very atoms of the iron. It was useless. A secondary cluster of mortars on the far wall thudded heavily, lobbing three glowing thermal detonators high into the air. Sanwa's HUD tracked the parabolic arcs of the explosive's trajectory. Critical. Impact in 1.2 seconds. Unit 4. Unit 5. Evasive maneuver. Sanwa screamed in her mind. The detonators landed directly on the grating amidst the huddled humans. The explosion was a blinding sphere of white-hot kinetic force. The blast utterly consumed the remaining three workers, turning them into a spray of ash and superheated shrapnel. The shockwave tore through the bridge, ripping a massive 10-meter section of the iron grating entirely free from its moorings. Unit 4 and Unit 5 had been advancing through the plasma fire, their matte black armor absorbing glancing blows that would have melted standard infantry plating, but they could not absorb the structural collapse of the bridge beneath their feet. As the iron grating buckled and sheared apart, Unit 4 lost his footing. The servos in his knees whined as he lunged forward, trying to grab the remaining solid edge of the bridge. A stray plasma bolt caught him directly in the right shoulder joint, severing the heavy myomer bundles that powered the arm. His grip failed. He slipped violently backward, his boots scraping uselessly against the falling steel. Unit 4. Unit 5 transmitted over the neural link. With absolute, selfless precision, Unit 5 dove forward over the collapsing gap, extending his hand to catch Unit 4's armored forearm. Their synthetic gloves locked together with a magnetic hum. For a fraction of a second, Unit 5 held his squadmate, his boots magnetically clamped to the twisted, groaning edge of the broken bridge. Then, the ancient plasma battery on the right flank recalibrated. A concentrated, sustained beam of thermal energy slammed directly into Unit 5's chest plate. The localized heat was so intense that Sanwa's HUD immediately flashed a critical armor breach warning. Unit 5. Armor integrity failing. Internal temperature critical. The magnetic clamps in Unit 5's boots overheated and fused, shattering under the sheer weight of two heavily armored combatants. The edge of the bridge gave way completely. Sanwa stepped to the absolute lip of the platform, her hand reaching out into the empty air. Through the external audio receptors of her suit, she heard the dying human workers screaming, long, drawn-out wails of primal terror that echoed endlessly down the subterranean canyon. But from Unit 4 and Unit 5, there were no screams. As they plummeted over the edge, entangled in falling iron and smoking debris, their external speakers emitted only a sharp, mechanical burst of audio static, a localized comms dump, a final robotic glitch as their external modulators failed. But inside Sanwa's helmet, on the private neural link, it was different. She heard Unit 5's real voice, a desperate, human gasp of effort, followed by Unit 4's quiet, resigned whisper, "Clear the board. 1. Get the device." Sanwa stared down into the abyss. Her combat HUD instantly locked onto their falling thermal signatures, painting them in bright, tragic green against the pitch-black void. She watched them fall. The world around her seemed to slow down, mimicking the cold, clinical pacing of a digital simulation tracking assets. Unit 4. Unit 5. Velocity, 42 meters per second. Ellipsis. Increasing. Depth, 300 meters. Comm of the plasma batteries, having successfully cleared the biological targets from their kill box, abruptly powered down. The strobing flashes ceased. The colossal chamber was plunged instantly back into absolute, crushing darkness, leaving only the blue tactical wireframe in Sanwa's vision. Depth, 700 meters. Stephen dragged himself to the edge of the platform, shining his pitiful halogen light down into the dark. It illuminated nothing but mist and dust. Who? Ellipsis. Who went over? He gasped, his chest heaving, his face pale and slick with sweat. Did the boys make it? Sanwa did not answer. She stood perfectly still, a black statue perched on the edge of the abyss, her twin irises locked onto the telemetry scrolling across her visor. Depth, 1,200 meters. Unit 5 internal vitals. Failing. She watched the two green icons shrink smaller and smaller on her digital map. They were falling in perfect formation, locked together in the dark, plunging toward the roaring waters 2 kilometers below. There was no panic in their descent vectors, no flailing, just the terrifying, beautiful mathematics of gravity claiming its due. Depth, 1,800 meters. Signal degradation, 85%. The roar of the subplanetary river filled the silence of the chamber, a heavy, endless bass note that vibrated through the steel platform beneath Sanwa's boots. Depth, 2,000 meters. Telemetry lost. Assets disconnected. The two green icons blinked out on her HUD. The digital map was empty save for the cold blue wireframe of the pillars and the jagged, broken edge of the bridge. Inside her helmet, Sanwa closed her eyes for a fraction of a second. She filed the grief away into a sealed, compressed partition in her mind, locking it behind the cold, iron necessity of the mission. She was the commander. The board had been cleared. Sanwa opened her eyes and turned her featureless black visor toward Stephen, who was still staring in horror at the broken bridge. The local assets are neutralized, Sanwa stated through her external chest speaker, her synthesized voice identical, flat, and chillingly devoid of emotion. Unit 4 and Unit 5 are designated MIA. We are down to 3 operatives and 1 guide. She raised her carbine, smoothly ejecting taking the spent thermal magazine and snapping a fresh one into place with a sharp click. She looked toward the massive, sealed blast doors at the far end of the platform, the blue waypoint marker pulsing steadily in her vision. The security trap confirms the asset is down here, Sanwa said, stepping past Stephen into the dark. Mood, Sergeant, the next level awaits. Text field. Vertical scroll bar. 60. Note.
So, that's that. There we go. I should be back on screen now. Perfect. So, I mean, we know that John's dead. We know that the entire local team is now dead as well, except for Steven, obviously. Next, we know that the device is now missing, and this whole book will basically be a search for that. So, like the Holy Grail, basically. Because this device, I think it's explained a little bit further in the explainer that I'm about to play. But it literally can turn basically any mass into whatever material, food item, whatever's required. Obviously the humans were unable to replicate it, or they would all have one. And they've basically eliminated or alienated all that race that created that device, so they're not going to get any help from that direction. Alright, so let's get to it. This next section is roughly about, I think, a 7, sorry, I keep hitting the microphone with my breath, but there we go. I think that should be okay. Maybe a little bit higher. There we go. Perfect. So let's get to that part now, and then we have some personal videos to kind of wrap it up, guys.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Explainer.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping straight into a high-stakes, gritty sci-fi universe that draws heavy inspiration from the absolute titans of the genre. We are talking about Lethal Journey, a story that effortlessly blends the massive, sweeping societal scale you'd find in Isaac Asimov's Foundation or Frank Herbert's Dune with the incredibly intimate, high-pressure tactical stakes of Star Trek and Starship Troopers. For anyone new to this universe, if you love deep world building, narratives built around completely impossible odds, and a relentless countdown, you are going to absolutely devour this. We're going to break down exactly how a sprawling, oppressive planetary regime gets pushed to the absolute brink of violent revolution, all within a terrifying 5-day window.
So, what actually happens when a colossal alien arcology is given exactly 5 days before total annihilation? I really want you to keep that ticking clock in the back of your mind throughout our explainer today. This single, completely uncompromising deadline is the engine driving the entire story. It acts as a literal pressure cooker. It forces heroes, villains, bureaucrats, and scavengers to just throw their normal routines out the window and make desperate, irreversible choices. Every single character's motivation is suddenly shoved under a terrifying magnifying glass.
All right, Section 1, welcome to the junk pile. Okay, let's set the stage here. Welcome to the planet Sierra Alpha 1, although to the people actually living there, it's just called the junk pile. It's not a sprawling open landscape, it's a primary arcology, basically a towering closed-loop superstructure where your entire existence is dictated by altitude. Much like the stark class divides we see in classic sci-fi megacities, think Coruscant in Star Wars or the multi-layered hubs in Stargate, status here is strictly vertical. Up at the very top, you've got these pristine, sunlit summits with totally opulent administrative sanctums. Clean air, absolute luxury, the whole shebang. But travel down a bit and the reality shifts drastically. The bottom levels are defined by dead cold, toxic smog, rust, and automated defense drones that are completely lethal. An entire generation of human laborers lives and dies down there in hazardous plasma forges, doing nothing but processing raw materials to fuel the wealth of the ruling class far above them. It is a massive powder keg, just waiting for a spark.
Moving right along to Section 2, the 1% sabotage.
So, we have this incredibly volatile world, right? But the inciting incident that sets this whole epic conflict into motion isn't some massive planetary invasion. It's actually incredibly subtle. Across the entire arcology, manufacturing efficiency drops, but by exactly 1%. Just 1. To the rulers, this just looks like pure, frustrating administrative incompetence. But the brilliant part is that this is actually a deliberate, highly calculated sabotage campaign by an underground rebellion. It's a strategic move engineered to induce absolute panic and paranoia among the ruling class, but without tripping any of the alarms that would trigger a full-scale military lockdown. It forces the rulers to look inward and just start pointing fingers at each other. How are they pulling this off? Well, it's basically death by 1,000 cuts. The rebels are using these tiny, almost invisible tactics. We're talking microscopic fractures in scrubber valves, or quietly routing raw alloys straight into the incinerators. One of the key architects of this plan is a guy named John. He looks like a standard heavy laborer, but he is secretly a level 10 technological penetrator. Navigating these lethal service conduits, John manages to bypass primary security and implant a dormant sleeper device right into the Arcology's main data bus. And he takes his orders from a clandestine council of 6 rebel leaders, who use these shifting holographic scramblers. It is a classic sci-fi espionage trope brought right down to the ground level, making the underdog the engine of the story and completely blinding the ruling class to the true threat gathering literally under their feet.
Which brings us to Section 3, a 5-day death sentence.
Just as this subtle sabotage really starts taking hold, the narrative takes a massive, violent turn. The slow burn becomes a raging inferno, thanks to the explosive arrival of Sector General Franklin's military fleet. Franklin's border patrol was absolutely ambushed by rebel ships. He lost 10 of his 15 vessels, and the surviving 5 are limping toward the junk pile, critically crippled. So Franklin contacts the Arcology's ruler, this deeply paranoid 400-pound alien named Governor Frederick, with an impossible demand. Frederick has exactly 5 days to prepare the dry docks and produce highly specific missing quantum drive components. We're talking rare magnetic core regulators that the Arcology simply does not have. If Frederick cannot fix those hyperdrives in exactly 5 days, Franklin is going to execute him. Just like that, the trap is sprung.
Now, a really key element of the author's narrative approach for anyone stepping into this universe is making sure every single character has deeply relatable, very human motivations, even in this bizarre alien setting. That 5-day deadline acts as the ultimate pressure cooker, exposing these primal drives and perfectly grounding these grand spacefaring concepts. You've got 22-year-old Danielle, a bureaucrat who climbed the ladder a bit too fast, desperately hunting for the saboteur because she'll be executed if she fails. Governor Frederick is volatile and just scrambling to survive General Franklin's wrath. Franklin himself is uncompromising in his demand for repairs. And then you have the rebels, John, fighting to overthrow this oppressive regime simply to save his family, and his young son Adam, who just wants to ease his parents' suffering. This one deadline binds them all to a single inevitable collision. Let's dig into Section 4, the Trojan Horse Protocol. You remember that dormant sleeper device John planted in the data bus? Well, it needs off-world decryptor codes to actually activate, and the rebellion's absolute masterstroke is using General Franklin's arriving, crippled military fleet as a literal Trojan horse. Attached to the blind spots on the lower hull of the flagship are these things called stuff pods. They are immense, freezing, lead-lined waste containers. And because they are so heavily shielded, they are completely invisible to standard biological scanners. Hiding inside those freezing, pitch-black containers is a specialized team of elite off-world rebels carrying the exact decryptor codes John needs. When the fleet finally docks on day 5, automated cranes are going to detach these waste pods and drop them straight down the central freight shafts to be incinerated in Sector 7. This means John's mission is utterly terrifying. He has to quietly assemble a ground team of heavy lifters and dock rats, wait at the very bottom of the lethal freight chute, and manually cut these off-worlders out of the pods. And the catch? Oh, it's brutal. They have an incredibly tight 4-minute survival window before the automated hydraulic crushers engage and obliterate everything in the room. It is a do-or-die extraction mission of the absolute highest order.
So think about this for a second. We have the ruling class totally panicking over missing starship parts, the military prepping for an all-out war, and the rebels orchestrating a highly lethal extraction. But while all the adults are locked in this deadly game of chess, who is quietly preparing for the actual future of the planet?
We find out in Section 5, the scavenger prodigy awakens.
And this brings us to the ultimate underdog of the whole story, Adam, John's preteen son. Drawing heavily on that classic sci-fi trope of the young, isolated prodigy discovering their immense potential, something you see constantly in Star Wars or Dune, Adam operates in complete isolation. He's holed up inside an abandoned residential unit that was permanently sealed off a decade ago. He has successfully salvaged micropower regulators and clean data bridges to essentially rebuild a cracked datapad. And now, he's actually interfacing with a localized AI advisory system and running hyper-realistic flight simulators. By manually repairing the wireframe schematics of wrecked ships in his little digital sandbox, he's learning the intimate nuts-and-bolts anatomy of advanced starships. Every blown fuse he replaces in the simulation is directly building his real-world engineering intelligence.
Adam is unknowingly arming himself with the exact skills required to pilot the vessels that will become the centerpiece of the coming revolution.
All right, final stretch. Section 6, the inevitable convergence.
Because look, none of these storylines exist in a vacuum, right? They violently crash together as the week ends. Just trace the timeline. During days 1 through 4, Governor Frederick's absolute panic pushes the industrial lower levels to 150% capacity. Ironically, this only creates more chaos and actively aids the rebels' plans, all while Danielle is desperately hunting for John's saboteurs. Then, day 5 arrives. The crippled military fleet finally docks. The Trojan horse is inside the gates. At minute 0, those automated cranes drop the stuff pods, and John begins his lethal 4-minute extraction at the very bottom of the arcology. All of this is happening right as young Adam's technological awakening reaches its absolute peak. It is this perfectly structured, frantic collision course.
And that brings us to the ultimate reality of this narrative. When that 5-day deadline officially expires, the junk pile is going to ignite. We have desperate bureaucrats, a brutal military, masterful rebel tacticians, and a self-taught scavenger prodigy all locked in a room right as the match is struck. The author built this entire world to honor the legacy of classic sci-fi, but ultimately asks us a deeper question. In a galaxy defined by cold mechanics and rigid hierarchies, can the sheer force of human will and family devotion actually break the machine? I highly encourage you to dive into the source material of Lethal Journey to find out whose survival strategy holds up when the ashes finally settle. Seriously, what do you think would happen if you were given just 5 days to overthrow a planet?
Welcome back, everybody. So thanks for listening to that. All right, so now it's a little personal story time, I guess. What happened is when we first bought this house, I think it was in 2022. What am I doing? I'm trying to turn something down. It's the wrong one. Oh, shit. Okay, perfect. Let's see. Great. Perfect. So, yeah, we bought this house, and then we needed a bigger vehicle because we had a bunch of stuff that we wanted to do. So my dad gave us a 2010 Buick Enclave. Gifted us, let's call it. The very first day for us to even get it on the road, it needed like $1,500 worth of repairs. So we did that. Then the steering pump went on it. Tires were worn. It needed a bunch of stuff at that particular moment, so we slowly got all those things fixed. In this particular videos you're about to see, the coolant hoses needed to be replaced still, so they were leaking, so we kept having to refill it. Steering pump was leaking, so we had to keep refilling it. Tires kept leaking, so we had to keep refilling those. What happened is we had booked a cruise, and I was gonna go basically book all the tickets from Buffalo and fly to New York City. I think JFK or LaGuardia, I can't remember. And we were gonna take the cruise from there and not take our car. But literally the day before the cruise in the morning, this is back in 2024, I think February. It was the day that it snowed so much that all flights across like most of North America were really shut down, like Canada, top of the US and so forth. Everything was canceled, so we had to decide what we were gonna do, because I don't know how hard it would have been to get our money back, and we had already paid for the cruise, of course. We didn't know like how we would get there, basically, so we took the Buick. Again, this is when it's really bad condition. We took it to this parking lot nearby our house by the boat launch. And I told Jen, let's find the deepest patch of snow and let's drive it around and see how it goes. And at the same time, we did a few donuts, which was, you know, just for the fun of it. Subsequently, the next video is just us driving through the Brooklyn Tunnel. Me guessing at when the tunnel finishes. You know, just a little light banter. Husband and wife banter, let's call it. And the very final, after that trip, after we got off the cruise ship, and I can have other videos and stories about that particular cruise because there's so much to talk about. But after we got off that cruise ship, we had been parked there for 10 days. But on actually, let's back up a little bit. So while we were driving there, we basically did it in a straight run over like 3 3 a.m. In downtown New York, in Manhattan, and there was nowhere to park. They wouldn't let us into the cruise terminal parking, and my wife almost started crying when they said she had to wait another 3 hours because we had been up for so long. She was so exhausted, we just wanted to sleep. So they did actually, when they saw how sad she got, after about an hour of us being parked on the side of the parking garage waiting for it to open, they did let us up there. So we slept in the car from I think 4 a.m. until maybe 11 a.m. when we got on board. Maybe it was even a little bit later. So that was, first really good sleeping adventure in that vehicle that it really came in clutch, like unbelievably so. So yeah, after we got off that cruise ship, we had left our car right at the cruise terminal parking, of course. And we got back in our car, we're about to drive away. And some guy asked us, like, the guy that makes you pay, I guess. He's like, how long you guys been here? I'm like, oh, about 10 days. He's like, okay, you're good to go. I'm like, are you serious? Like, okay. You just, we didn't question it too much, and we drove away. I expected I might get something in the mail, or whatever. Maybe I just don't understand how parking in New York works, but we never got a bill. So thank you, New York. We do. Everybody loves New York. New York, New York. So yeah, you hear a little bit of my Manhattan accent get thrown on there. I don't know, every time I go on a vacation, I kind of pick up an accent for a little bit. And Jenny, as you saw from the very beginning of this video, how she guides me. So I either hold on to her elbow, I stay on her right side, I hold her left elbow with my right elbow with my left hand, or I'll have my hand on her shoulder, sometimes on the back of her neck lightly, or just as long as one part of my hand or body is basically in contact with her, I know where she's walking. So even if my hands are full, she's able to like guide me around very well. And on that cruise ship, there was a couple nights that Jen wasn't feeling too well, so I did have my ID cane, and I'm very, very good on the cruise ships. I have a very good sense of, I guess, direction and spatial awareness, so no problem. I was able to get around all on my own. I've been on cruise ships many times by myself, so this was nothing to me. But when we're together, I just, again, typically she's making me carry something, or have a drink in my hand, or have a coffee in my hand or something. So I can't use a cane all the time, but she's awesome about it. And my wife loves voiceover and text to speech and all these things, and audio description. She loves audio description. So when we first met, she called me one night and she's like, my TV is just talking all the time and I don't know how to stop it. And I thought she was talking about like audio description, right? So I kind of explained to her how to turn it off. It turned out that's not what she had turned on. She actually turned on the screen reader on her Samsung, which you had to like hold on the mute button until the menu comes up and turn it off. I had no idea. She wasn't explaining herself very well. But once she got with me, I showed her how I watch stuff. So we started watching a few shows. I think Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and that one with the little deer kid, Sweet Tooth, and a bunch of other stuff on Netflix. When Netflix was really good back in like early 2020, before all the stuff happened, and now Netflix kind of sucks. Like I don't know, maybe you guys all watch Netflix, but I find it's just no good media being made anymore. And all we do now is just watch streamers. So let's watch this, and then we are gonna raid Kimmery Sky's channel on Twitch. Sorry for you people on YouTube, you cannot get involved in this process, but if you join Twitch and follow me, the blind husband, and follow Pete Gustin, that'd be awesome, because Pete is my motivation to do all of this, and I didn't know it was this possible or even accessible to a blind streamer in any way to be able to basically produce like my own almost like TV show. And I really enjoy talking, obviously. I like the sound of my own voice, like my wife likes to say. I've been on the phones for 13 years, so of course I do, or I wouldn't be doing what I do. Like Pete says, this is for fun and work is for living, obviously. So let's get to these videos and we're gonna wrap up the stream. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. I do start work again next week. I typically work Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, so maybe I'll try to make it a goal to at least stream 3 times a week, and which would be on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. But I'm not dedicating to any schedule. Don't want it to feel like it's work, obviously, so we'll try to avoid that. All right, have a great day, guys. Bye.
Welcome to the welcome.
Drifting in the snow, y'all. Drifting-ish. Weapon. How's the steering?
It's smelling like gas or something though.
You're burning the clutch. Alright, stop doing this.
Alright, I'm just getting normal way.
I believe this is the Brooklyn Tunnel, if I'm not mistaken. At least all the tolls are automatic, right?
Yep. I have to pay the 407 too.
We're gonna take the 407 home? Oh, that bill, yeah. There's no 407 there. We're gonna re-enter to Niagara Falls, right? Not New York, Buffalo?
Whatever.
Niagara Falls.
Yes.
We'll do Niagara Falls. I'll get you a direction. Well, that's a long fucking tunnel, yo. Holy, y'all. Check this shit out, bro. You ain't never seen a tunnel like this. You ain't got glasses like this. You don't got hair like this. Holy, bro. It just keeps going. And we're almost out of it. 3.
Nope.
10. 20. 19. How much tunnel video do you think they really want to see?
That's it. Well, remember, I needed.
Alright, y'all. So we're just pulling out of New York City. We're just in Manhattan right now. Jenny's driving, of course. The vehicle turned on without an issue. One tire was down about 12 psi. We did pump that up. The right tire was down about 1 psi.
Yeah.
Not bad at all, y'all. Somehow, coincidentally, when we tried to pay for parking, he asked us how long had we been there. We said 10 days. He said, you're good to go. So I'm not sure if we're gonna get charged or what's going on. About a 7-hour drive ahead of us, but we are gonna take a break and relax and chill.
Probably nap somewhere.
I'll be nap somewhere. We got all the freedom in the world, and that's our back of our car filled the fuck up, y'all.